Okay, so my name's Jim. I'm from Hypervac Technologies, and this is a quick video about our hybrid duct vacuums. Basically, Hypervac Technologies it was born from another duct cleaning company, and originally we were founded in 1979 by my father. And we started building our own equipment in the late 80s because we got hired on jobs to do prisons and hospitals. And the duct trucks we were using, of course, didn't have long enough hoses to get to the ducting. So what we did was we started developing our own vacuum systems, and one of the first vacuums we ever developed was this old monster, and this is called a Rev 360, and this vacuum dates back all the way to the 1980s. Not this particular one, but this was one of our first vacuums that we ever designed and built, and it's been a real workhorse for the company ever since. Since then, the duct cleaning vacuums have kind of evolved and morphed into what we see today, and these are the new vacuums called the Hypervac Revolution Hybrid vacuums. And we build these vacuums in three configurations. First one's a 120 volt budget vacuum. Now, the word budget doesn't mean it's any less of a vacuum. With this vacuum, we dress it down a little. We don't have the stainless steel guards, and typically the wheels don't have the aluminum caps or the covers. And the motor uses a lesser quality, less industrial grade motor. It's still a good vacuum, and it draws around 2,500 CFM, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's for people that are on a tight budget. You still get a good quality vacuum for a little less money. Next vacuum we go up to is a 120 volt professional model. It's got the full guard on it. It uses the industrial grade motor, and it's a little bit more money, but also has a little more suction. It's closer to 3,000 CFMs. And the third vacuum, which we'll go over all these more in detail, is the 220 volt hybrid variable speed vacuum. This one's drawing close to 5,000 CFMs. It uses a 3 horsepower industrial grade motor, and it's by far the most powerful vacuum, and it's close to double the suction of any other duct cleaning vacuum on the market. Okay, so the hybrid duct vacuums, they can run upright, where you just take your hose off and plug it into your ductwork or go into the ceiling. And they also operate equally as well laying down. So you can also run them off the side into your duct. And the way our filtration banks are designed, you could even hang this thing upside down. It would still work just fine. So they can run laying down or upright, whatever you prefer, whatever you need to do. These vacuums have been designed by myself and by my business partner Scott, and we both have a long history in duct cleaning, and we tried to take everything we possibly could from our 30 years of duct cleaning experience, and also listening to other duct cleaning customers what they wanted in a duct cleaning vacuum. So everything you see here, from the size, the shape, and even the color, has been taken into account. So for instance, this color, believe it or not, we actually spent a lot of time developing this color, and the reason we did is because all duct vacuums will attract dust. So it's important that you try to hide that dust, because you can't be guaranteed that your worker is going to clean your vacuum before it goes into a customer's home every time. So we actually developed this color, and it's called Dirt. And we call it this color because it blends in with dirt as good as we can, or we try to get it to mix as closely the color of dirt as we could. So that way the color blends in. We can make these in pretty much any color if you had a big enough order, but typically they come standard in this color. Next is the design. First thing you'll notice is the handle on these vacuums is attached to the bottom. Okay, some duct cleaning vacuums, they have, for some reason, they attach their handle to the top section where none of the weight is. All the weight's going to be on the bottom of a duct vacuum. So the nice part of this is if you're kicking it around, you get nice balance. Okay, one hand, I can roll it around, no problem. Also, because the handle's holding onto the bottom of the vacuum, you don't have to worry about the top of your vacuum tearing off. So some duct vacuums I've seen, you've got the handle on the top with all the weight being held by that handle. So if you were to forget to latch it for some reason, you could literally have that bottom half of the vacuum fall off and go down a flight of stairs. So we always make sure our handles are on the bottom of the vacuum and they're secured. If you notice, one hand. That's a 115-pound vacuum, and I can roll it around with one hand without any problem. A lot of it's because the way we balance the motor inside the casing is set up just right. The other part is 12-inch wheels, and they're semi-pneumatic. So in other words, there's almost no air in them, so you don't have to worry about your wheels going flat anymore. And also the 12-inch wheel, it guarantees you the ability to go up and down stairs easily. So if you go with a 10-inch or 9-inch wheel, they tend to get caught on stair treads. But a 12-inch wheel is big enough that it doesn't get caught on the stair treads, it just bounces right over each stair tread. Also, the width, 22 inches in diameter. So it'll go through virtually any doorway without too much problem. And the depth is also at 22 inches. So some of the duct vacuums you see, they're very narrow, but they're also very deep. And trying to get that down a flight of stairs is almost impossible. So by having it square or squared around, you can get it up and down a set of stairs fairly simple. It's not too deep, and it's still small enough to get through any opening. So also, the new hybrid duct vacuum is made out of high density polyethylene. So you can have two different types of polyethylene when you're rotomolding. You can have low density and high density. Low density is great if you're making toys, but if you're making a product that you need to last, take a beating, high density, you can bang it, beat the hell out of it. If it's aluminum, that would dent it right now, but high density will actually bounce. You can beat it up. This thing will last for many years. You don't have to worry about it falling apart, and it will not crack in cold weather. Okay, high density is the same material that they make water containers for, and they use it up north in the Arctic. So this stuff will go for a long time with no worries. Okay, so the hybrid vacuums are also in two pieces. They're what we call modular construction. So basically, you can break it apart into two pieces. Now, normally you can roll this around, get it from your van into the house, all the way down the stairs to the furnace, and not have to break it apart into two pieces. But if you had a spiral staircase, or you had to go through a crawl space, or take it in someplace tight, the nice part is you could break it down into two pieces and carry it. So when you pop the lid off, it's actually very simple to just pick it up and carry it like this. Okay, it's not that heavy. It weighs about 40 pounds or so. Most guys can pick that up and carry it up and down a set of stairs. The bottom section, this is really easy. Now we're talking 70-ish pounds. And you can roll that around, get it up and down a flight of stairs without any issue whatsoever. Be really simple. You could even pick this up if you really had to. I wouldn't recommend trying to pick it up, but if you had to, you could. So modular construction, very important. Next part is by having the filter pod completely in its own space and having your vacuum generator in the bottom, you can have multiple filter pods. So if you're doing a big commercial job and your filter pods are filling up with dirt quickly, you can have 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these, and when one gets full, you can literally just change it out, put a fresh one on, and go back to work, and then blow out all your filter pods later, or have one of the other guys that's not doing anything, take it outside, blow it out, and then get it ready for when you do need it again. Literally it takes seconds to change these out, take them apart, put them back together. It's just that simple. Okay, so the hybrid vacuums normally they all come with a 10-inch inset in the opening, but most companies nowadays are asking us to send it with a 10/8 reducer. So the vacuum can either run with a 10-inch hose or an 8-inch hose, and we can ship it either or we can ship it with a 10-inch connecting collar or keep with the 8-inch connecting collar. It makes no difference to us. Most companies nowadays though run 8-inch because it's so much easier to find a spot on the duct to cut an 8-inch hose, and you don't really worry about suction loss when you're only running a few feet of hose, whether it's 10-inch or 8-inch. The difference in suction that you would lose is so minuscule. It's probably better just to stick with an 8-inch because it's just easier, especially in new home construction. The new homes with smaller furnaces, smaller ducting, it's getting really hard to find a spot to cut a 12-inch or 10-inch hole. So nowadays most guys just go with an 8-inch, and if you have good suction, you should have no problem running an 8-inch hose. If you've got a duct vacuum you've got to run 12 inches on, then you should probably get a new duct vacuum. Okay, so the hybrid duct vacuums have the ability to hook up an exhaust hose onto the front of the vacuum and capture the exhaust air if you need to. So normally you have the grill over top, and this grill has a plastic cover. Normally it doesn't have that. Okay, but normally you take that cover off, and this is what you'd see. And on here we can ship it with a collar if needed to. You can actually hook up a hose, and from that hose you can exhaust the air outside, or you can exhaust it into a HEPA silencing box. And it's a quick and easy way. So if you do have a high hazard job, a critical job on a nuclear station or something, or a high hazard lab, then capturing that exhaust air is no problem with this vacuum. I just want to talk briefly about suction and impellers. Typically all duct vacuums very much use the same impeller nowadays. There's really only a couple manufacturers for them. Most of them are made out of plastic or polyamides, which they're good impellers. There's nothing wrong with it. This is typically a common impeller used by most 120 volt vacuums. This is the impeller we use on our 220 volts. So if you hold them up, clearly one is much bigger than the other. So this is why we get so much suction on our 220 volt vacuum. Now, some companies will take 2 of these impellers and put them in one vacuum, thinking that you're going to double your suction. In reality, the laws of physics don't work that way. So if you were to take a second impeller that's exactly the same size, you're only going to add about, at best, 50% more suction. And that's if you don't have any filters in your vacuum. If you add a third one, you'll add 12%. If you add a fourth one, you add 6%. So to add more impellers is definitely not the way to get more suction. So basically this impeller will draw between 2,500 and 3,000 CFMs. Here you're up towards 5,000, a little over 5,000 CFMs. Also, free air and bench tests are very critical in comparing a duct vacuum. A lot of manufacturers are using what we call free air CFM ratings, which is basically what will this impeller do on a bench test. So if you hook this up to a motor without anything blocking it, without no filter obstructing it, how much CFM will it do? Well, of course they'll do more airflow because you don't have any blockage. But what is important is how much CFM do these generate when your filters are actually in place? And that's very critical. So free air CFM, ignore them when you see them. They're pointless. All you want to care about is how much suction does this draw when the filters are in place. And if you see someone giving you free air CFM stat, make sure you contact them and ask them, okay, that's great, but what is it actually when there's filters in place? That's more critical. And at Hypervac, we usually only give actual CFM filtered air specs. And that's why if you see on our website, you'll see the CFM rating with filtered air. It's very critical. The hybrid duct vacuums, one of the biggest concerns that customers told us they hated about their duct vacuums was face loading of the filters. So we're seeing a lot of duct vacuums where you just have a flat filter in the top, and it's probably the worst thing you can put inside a duct vacuum because you're sucking up all this dust and dirt and lint out of people's ductwork, and it's all getting caked onto the top of that flat filter, and it's face loading, it's covering right up, and so no airflow can get through, and so it blocks off your suction. There's nothing more frustrating than having to have to shut down your vacuum 20 minutes into a house, into a duct cleaning, and change your filters, put new ones back in, and go back to work, and then have to do that again 20 minutes later. So we fought hard to design a system where you wouldn't have as much face loading. So these can go quite a bit longer. A lot of times you can go hours and hours of duct cleaning depending on the type of dust and lint, but you can go hours before they'll face load and actually give you problems. And a lot of that is in the design of the filter. So if you take a look at the top in here, we've got, first of all, a pre-filtered bag. And if you look around the vacuum itself, you've got a ton of space. So all this space can be filled up around your duct vacuum. So the dust can build up in here, and you don't have to worry about it face loading halfway through a job. It's very, very rare that happens. Once you take the main filter bag out, this bag can hold a lot of debris. So we're talking tons. This bag filters out the bulk of it. Your second stage, you've got a biostatic wrap in here. So this is your second stage, and it traps a lot of the medium to smaller particles of dust. And then you've got your main cartridge. Now, here I've got a broken down view of it. And if you look closely, this is your biostatic, and this is the main cartridge. Now this bolts in from the bottom of the cartridge, so you can change it when it does actually get worn out. But basically, in here you've got hundreds of pleats, and in those pleats can carry copious amounts of dust and dirt. This is a nanofiber filter, and it'll filter down to close to HEPA, 99.16, so it's incredibly close to a HEPA rating. And it can be reused hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So if you blow it out, reuse it, blow it out, reuse it, you're not buying new filters every week for your vacuum. And that's critical because some of these other vacuums, you can spend thousands, literally thousands of dollars a year on replacement filters, and that's what we call the printer trap, where you can buy a printer for your computer for $89, but then it costs $400 for ink, and we don't play that game. We give you a high-end filter right at the start, and you're not spending thousands of dollars in filters after the sale. Also, another critical mention, lots of people like to talk about HEPA filters. And at Hypervac, we do have a full HEPA filter for your vacuum if you want. Let me grab it. This is our HEPA filter. Almost identical to our nanofiber. This filter will work just about as good as our nanofiber. One of the drawbacks to the HEPA filters is they don't last as long and they restrict suction. And you got to ask yourself, is it really worth spending the money on the HEPA filter when you're going to be changing it more often, when this will do almost the exact same thing? some duct vacuum manufacturers will brag about their HEPA filters when in reality they're not actually operating at a HEPA standard. So this filter is operating at close to HEPA. It's MERV 16, almost MERV 17. This is a full MERV 17. If you wanted it, we can sell it to you. Whether or not you'll use it is a different story. Now, when you look at many of the other duct vacuum manufacturers, they use a big square HEPA filter. Now, a HEPA filter, HEPA paper is very, very fragile. And so you can just touch it, look at it wrong, and it'll fail. So a lot of times the HEPA filters inside those vacuums, as soon as you turn them on, they're actually starting to fail already from micro tears in the fabric. Literally, we're talking tissue paper for HEPA. And so there's just no advantage to using it, because a lot of times, as soon as you turn that vacuum on, it's no longer running at a HEPA standard. And we've tested many of our competitors' vacuums, and a lot of them are coming in at MERV 12, MERV 10 with the HEPA filters inside them. We'd rather have a consistent MERV 16.9 or whatever it is, and then if you do need HEPA for a job, you can either run this HEPA filter, or you can hook on an exhaust air and exhaust your air outside through the exhaust port, or we can take that air and blow it into another certified HEPA box. And because the air that's coming out of there is already filtered at near HEPA quality, that air going into the HEPA silencing box is so clean that you probably never would have to replace the HEPA filter in that silencing box. Our 120 volt vacuums, you got the budget and your professional model, are good all-around vacuums for small residential and light commercial or even big commercial now. A lot of guys buy these for mainly actually commercial, believe it or not. They used to use them for residential, but then we came out with the 220 volt, and everyone's kind of switching over to this one now. But they're not bad vacuums. You know, they have respectable suction. The professional model is close to 3,000 CFMs, and they're not super loud. I brought a decibel meter so we can try it out. And let's just kick it on. You can get a sense of it. Not bad. So I can talk actually right beside it. You can still hear me talking. I'm not yelling or screaming. And we'll just do what it. So decibel wise, 78, 79, if I get real close. 98, 99. If you run a household vacuum, it's probably actually quieter than a household vacuum. So, and for suction, it's not bad. Here, we'll just take a filter. I know it's hard to show what suction can do on a video, but this gives you an idea at least. Okay, simple on off. 120 volt vacuum. It weighs 115 pounds. It's 22 by 22, and then if you add on the back wheel and the handle, it's about 25 inches deep total with the handle and everything. It draws 12.5 amps when it's running, and you can run this thing 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it'll just keep on ticking. You won't have any problems with these. We've worked the bugs out of them, and then some. So that's the 120 volt vacuum. Budget vacuum, very much the same, just has a little less quality motor, and it's missing the front cover guard. Other than that, the suction's almost as good. Now you get into the 220 volt vacuum. This is our best selling vacuum by far. And at 220 volt, it draws close to 5,000 CFMs with filtered air. And we've got a new system now. Instead of just on-off, a single phase, we've gone to a three-phase system, and with variable frequency drive. So the reason we did this is because sometimes you go to homes and there'll be old wartime houses, they'll have bad wiring, or you'll go to commercial jobs with 300-year-old buildings, whatever. And they just aren't operating very well on 220 volt electricity. So if you're blowing a lot of breakers, you can literally just turn the speed down a bit and run it just below the threshold of the breaker, so you don't have to worry about not being able to work. But to turn it on, it's very simple. We purposely used a simple keypad so you didn't have to do a lot of figuring out. But you set it at 60, which is as fast as it can go, and you really just hit the button, and it'll start up nice and slow, so there's no hard startup surge. Get her going. And it's a little bit louder than the 220 volt or the 120 volt vacuum. So it's running around 10 decibels louder. Get close. A little bit louder. Not super loud though. For a vacuum that's pulling twice the suction of those ones, or almost twice the suction, it's not bad. suction's definitely stronger. You actually really got to pull on this to get it out. Big difference on suction. So I've dropped it down to 54, for instance. Say we blew a breaker. It's still really good suction. Turn it off, just hit the red button. Now the reason we did variable speed and not 2 speeds is because you're going to give up a lot of suction if you have to go to lower speed. I'd rather just go below the threshold of the breaker rather than just run at my lower speed. So we go variable speed because it's infinite on where you can control the suction. And that's the 220 volt vacuum, weighs about 154 pounds. Same thing, it's 22 inches wide by 22 with the handles 25 inches deep. And yeah, it's a 220 volt Hypervac hybrid vacuum. Obviously it's 220 volt power, so you can normally just plug it into the customer's dryer plug for the most part. So you'd have your dryer lead, they can twist lock on and off. You can also make up other leads, like a 3-prong dryer lead, stove lead, welding lead. They all twist lock on and off, just the short leads there. Now if you don't have a 220 volt power source, you can also use what's called a quick 220 splitter box. And the quick 220 splitter box allows you to plug into 2 separate 110 volt plugs on separate phases of power to get your 220 volt power. So first thing you do is you plug your vacuum in, pretty simple, twist lock it in. One of them would plug in close to where you are, okay, and then you would use a heavy gauge, like 12 gauge extension cord. If you got to go long distances, you might want to go to a 10 gauge extension cord. And basically what you do is you plug it into the other one. So here we already found the second phase of power. And when you find your second phase of power, a light will come on. Okay, so that light tells you you found both phases of power. Now it can't just be any two 110s, they have to be on opposing phases. So think, just for a quick and easy way to think about it is, you want to find a 110 volt plug from the left side of the breaker panel, and you want to find a 110 volt plug from the right side of the breaker panel. Now it doesn't technically work like that, but that's an easy way to think about it. It won't work on GFIs, some GFIs. And some of the new bedroom circuits it won't work on if the house is brand new. Once your light comes on, you switch the breaker to on, and away you go. You're good to go. Now you can walk over here. You'll notice the vacuum is already lit up, and you just hit your power, and it'll ramp up nice and slow and get going. And beautiful part about this is if one of those 110 volt circuits wasn't able to give you full 15 amps, you could just turn the speed down on the vacuum and still run below that threshold. There you go, full power. Okay. 220 volt hybrid.